Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Wow.
And so I'm going to ask people to please mute themselves so we don't have extraneous noises. And we're going to begin with Hine Matov, how good it is to sit together as brothers and sisters.
Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. 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 Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad.
Susie Kopel is going to lead us in the candle blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahalik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you, Susie. And Jordan's going to lead us in the Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zicharon lamase v'reishit ki hu yom techila lamikrai kodesh zecher letziyat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mechol ha'amim b'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
L'chaim. So as you all know, there are 12 tribes of Israel corresponding to the 12 sons of Jacob. As Jews, Yehudim were named after one of the 12 sons of Jacob. Now you might think that maybe were named after Joseph because he, after all, was Jacob's favorite. But also, not only was he Jacob's favorite, in Genesis chapters 37 to 50, we have a long, unbroken narrative all about Joseph, and Joseph is the hero. And actually, would any of these brothers merit that we be named after them? After all, except for Benjamin, who was born later, they wanted to murder Joseph. And in the end, they sold him into slavery. Well, the fact is that we're named after Joseph's brother, Judah. And historically, it's no doubt because Judah was the last tribe standing after the others were defeated by various empires. And it's the victor who writes the history. But there's more to this story than simple historical fact. And we'll find out as we go through the service. Lecha Dodi, come my bride, my friend, Shabbat.
Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela la la. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, Hishmi'anu el ham yachad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, V'shem u'tiferet v'litchila la 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki b'chol habaracha, mirosh mikedem nesucha, sov maaseh b'machshava tchila la 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Mikdash melech ir melucha, hu mitzihi mitoch ha'hafecha, rav lach shevet b'mekeh habacha, v'hu yachmor l'chaim chela la 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala, gam b'simcha u'v'tzola, toch amunei am segula. Boi chala Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela la la. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
So why are we named after Judah? It's because Judah is the character who evolves the most in the Torah. Now, remember when the brothers wanted to kill Joseph? Judah proposes the following instead. Judah says to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover his blood? Let's sell him to the Arabs and not harm him with our own hands. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed, As Rabbi Jonathan Sachs points out, this is a speech of monstrous callousness. There's no word about the evil of murder, merely pragmatic calculation, i.e., what will we gain if we kill him? At the very moment he calls Joseph our own flesh and blood, Judah is proposing selling him as a slave. Judah has none of the tragic nobility of Reuben, who alone of the brothers sees what they are doing. And he understands that what they're doing is wrong. And Reuben makes an attempt to actually save his brother Joseph. He fails, but he tries. At this point, Judah is the last person from whom we expect any great things. However, many years later, when the brothers are in Egypt trying to secure food during a famine, it's this very same Judah who's prepared to see his brother sold into slavery before, now is prepared to suffer that fate himself. Because Joseph plays a trick on his brothers to see if they've changed. He demands that Benjamin be placed in captivity. Benjamin is a new favorite of Jacob, their father. And Judah guarantees Benjamin's safety to his father. And now in Egypt, he approaches Joseph, Vayigash, the name of our Torah portion. He approaches this man, Joseph, whom he thinks is the vizier of Egypt and certainly not Joseph, his brother, because he doesn't recognize him. And he offers to become enslaved instead of Benjamin. As he says to Joseph, "Now, my lord, let me remain in place of the boy as your lordship's slave, and let him go with his brothers. How can I return to my father without the boy? I could not bear to see the misery which my father would suffer." Judah, who seemingly had no trouble letting his father believe that his favorite son, Joseph, was dead, now wants to protect his father from suffering the potential loss of his new favorite son, Benjamin. As Rabbi Sachs puts it, callousness has been replaced with concern. Indifference to his brother's fate has been transformed into courage on his behalf. He is willing to suffer what he once inflicted on Joseph so that the same fate should not befall Benjamin. The Chatzi Kaddish. Yikadal, the Yikadash Shemei Rabbah. Ve'alma divrach yehutei v'yamlich malhutei. B'cha yechon u'v'yom echon uv'chayedeho Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala, uv'izman kariv. V'imaru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach. Le'alla mulal me'almaya. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitale, v'yithalal, shemei dekudashah, v'riachu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, v'imaru. Amen. The call to worship, the Baruch Hu.
Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Bahu et Adonai. HaMevorach Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Baed Leolam 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 Leolam
This is called Evening the Evenings by Rabbi Gila Razel Raphael. Sacred words even the evenings. Wisdom opens gates locked around our hearts. Asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chochma poteach she'arim. Evening, the evenings, evening the frayed edges of our lives. Ma'ariv aravim, amen. Understanding alters with the times. Changing seasons, cycles divine. Uvitvuna meshane itim umachalif et hazmanim. Paint diamonds on the canvas called sky. Soothe our souls with a lilting lullaby. Umsader et hakochavim b'mishmortehem barakia kirtsono. Rolling, rolling into the night, rolling, rolling away the light. Goler or mipnei choshech, goler choshech mipnei or. Spirit of the night, we bless your name. Eternal light, eternal flame. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed. Ahavat olam, eternal love.
Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha v'ta Amcha v'ta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu lemadeta Otanu lemadeta Akein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachvenu Uvkumeinu nasiach bechukecha V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha Uv'mitzvotecha leolam ba'ed Ki hem chayenu V'horech yameinu Uvahem nege yomam v'layla Nege yomam v'layla Ve'avat chal tasir Mimeinu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael Ohev Yisrael.
Please join us in the Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Mahuto Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Mahuto Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
And Eileen Stein is going to lead us in the Ve'ahavta. Which is coming up momentarily.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך, בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך, ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Thank you, Eileen. That was beautiful.
You're welcome.
So the question is, how did Judah make such a dramatic 180-degree change, going from being willing to pretend his brother's dead and cause his father great sorrow to wanting to protect his father from feeling that way once again with another son? To answer this, we need to go back several chapters to the story of Tamar. Tamar, you may remember, had married Judah's two elder sons, not at the same time, one after the other, and each one had died. And that left her childless and a widow. Now, according to the kind of marriage that the book of Leviticus tells us we have to do in the Torah. Once a son dies and does not leave a male heir, his widow is supposed to marry the brother. So she married one brother, he died, she married the other one. Now the third brother is supposed to be her new husband. But Judah is afraid that his third son is going to share the same fate as the two elder ones. So he withholds his youngest son from her, thus leaving her unable to remarry and to have children, because once you're promised to somebody, you can't go marry someone else. When she understands her situation, Tamar disguises herself as a prostitute, and Judah sleeps with her because he doesn't recognize her. She becomes pregnant. Now, Judah is unaware that she had been disguised as a prostitute and concludes that she must have had a forbidden relationship and become pregnant, which is basically committing adultery. So he orders her to be put to death. But Tamar had gotten from Judah, during her disguise as a prostitute, Judah's seal, cord, and staff as a pledge. And these were sort of like your credit card and your driver's license in those days. And she had held on to them. So when Judah orders her to be put to death, she sends these items back to Judah with the message, "The father of my child is the man to whom these belong." And Judah now understands the whole story. He understands what happened. He could have said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. But instead of that, he knows that he put Tamar into a very impossible situation, and that he is not only the father of this child, but he also realizes that she has just behaved with extraordinary discretion in revealing the truth without shaming him. So Judah admits that he was wrong, and he declares, "She is more righteous than I." As Rabbi Sachs points out, this is the first time in the Torah that someone acknowledges their own guilt. It's also a turning point in Judah's life. Here is a man who is now able to recognize his own wrongdoing and to feel remorse. And not only that, to actually change. And this is the complex phenomenon that we call teshuvah. And that leads to that great scene in our Torah portion of this week, of Vayigash, where Judah is capable of turning his earlier behavior on its head and doing the opposite of what he had once done before. That is what teshuvah is. According to Maimonides, teshuvah, repentance, means that you're faced with the same situation a second time, but you don't do the same thing again. As Rabbi Sachs calls him, Judah is ish teshuvah, the penitential man. The Micha Mocha is our redemption song. It talks about how we were liberated from slavery in Egypt. The sea opened up and led us through on dry land. And in order to achieve teshuvah, we have to be open to really understanding our own behavior and the ways in which we enslave ourselves in negative behavior. So let's think about that as we sing the Micha Mocha.
Oh, mi kamocha v'alim Adonai. Oh, mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh. Oh, nora tehilo, oh, seif elei. Oh, nora tehilo, oh, save LA. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption song, these songs of freedom. Mahu techav Rahu v'necha bokeyam לפני משה, הוזה לי, ענו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption song, these songs of freedom, redemption song.
So this week's Torah portion, as I mentioned, is called Vayigash, and he approached, referring to Judah's approaching Joseph to offer himself as a captive in place of Benjamin. It is after Judah's ensuing powerful speech to him that Joseph finally decides to reveal himself to his brothers, who until this moment have not recognized him. According to the Hasidic rabbi, the Safat Emet, the power of Judah's words is contained in their deep penetration, reflected in the Parshah's opening words, Vayigash elav Yehuda, and Judah came close to him. The Safat Emet relates to him, to Joseph, but also to his own self, to himself, and also to him, to God. For indeed, Judah said nothing new in his speech, had no legal plea to make to Joseph. Nevertheless, since he accessed the reality of his narrative, salvation came to him. Judah was finally able to speak his truth, not a truth about resentment and jealousy, but a truth about love and compassion. And that was what touched Joseph profoundly. As Rachel Farbians explains, God was drawn in by Judah's testimony. The divine presence the Safat Emet implies resides in these acts of raw self-narration with their power to bring about salvation. What is more, it was Judah's ability to authentically tell his own story that was a transformative catalyst in the confrontation between Joseph and his brothers. Judah's narrative was perfectly pitched to lend voice to the mute Joseph, transforming an impasse of enmity into reunion and healing. Hashkivenu, may we lie down in peace.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. 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 Hushmor tzetenu Uvoenu L'chaim u'shalom me'eta ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim.
Please join me in the tefillah. Adonai sifatai, sifatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai sifatai, sifatai tiftach, ufi yagid Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzhak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibur ve'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim ve'Koneh HaKol V'Zoher Hasei Avot ve'Imahot Umevi Geula Lifnei V'neihem L'man Shemo be'ahava Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah. Atagi Bur Leolam Adonai Mechaye Hakol Ata Rav Lehoshia Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechaye Hakol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Verofe Holim Umatir Asurim Umekayem emunato lishene afar michamocha ba'al gevurot umido melach melech memit umechaye umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman atah l'chachayot hakol baruch atah Adonai Mechaye HaKol. Atakadosh v'shimcha kadosh ukedoshim b'chol yom yechalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. We continue silently for a few minutes. And we continue with Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha ve'hakol yoshvei tevel. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha ve'hakol yoshvei tevel. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim le'olam. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol ha-shalom. Ki ata hu melech Adon, lechol ha-shalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, ve'akol yoshvei tevel. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, tasim le'olam. V'tov b'necha levarech et amcha beit Yisrael, b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, ve'akol yoshvei tevel. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, tasim le'olam.
We now take a moment to think of those in need of healing. Unfortunately, there are more and more people in need of healing these days from COVID. And we think of congregants and friends and family of congregants: Jonathan Davidson, Kathy Cronenfeld, Jeff Hicks, Kenny Hayes, Randy Rubin, Ben Henderson, Kara Gilman, Rabbi Steve Robbins, Gloria Mangus, Steve Lux, Leslie Ferris, Juan Moriel, David Reed, Chase Scott, Jan Judman, Emily Pasquarelli, Julie Lapidus, Pamela Mangus, Johnny Sikat, Jerry Hirsch, Mark McNellis, Heshi Glick, Susan Bronstein, Pauline Dragovich, Michael Greenstein, Gail Pro. And I'll add names that are in the chat, and you can also unmute yourselves.
Diana Anderson.
Rhonda Moss, Ron Jones, Art Paduska,
Tom Allen.
June Carpenter, Casey McCarthy,
Put it in the chat.
Patty Podnar, Alan and Ellie Goldman, Robert Doctor, Elaine Burke, John Jenkins, Vance Wright, James Morrell. Oh, James Morrell is saying hello from Seattle. I apologize for that. I was reading I'm also reading the chat in the live stream. So hello from Seattle. Sorry, it was not a person that needed to be healed. Tom Allen, Joseph Hantman. Anyone else? Please join us for the Misha Berach, the prayer for healing.
Misha Berach Avotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov. Misha Berach Emotenu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, Rachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your hope. May our hearts be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Bless us with the vision for tomorrow. Help us to reach out to those in pain. May the warmth of friendship ease our sorrow. Give us courage, give us faith, show us the way. Mi sheberach avotenu, mi sheberach imotenu. Hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer. Hear our prayer and bless us as well. Hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer and bless us as well.
So I was going to do something very different at this moment, but then this afternoon I saw a video and I want to share it with you because there are over 4,000 people in Riverside County who are homeless. And the problem has only gotten worse over this past year, and it probably will get even worse with the way the economy is going and the pandemic. So I found this wonderful video that was sent out by cantor Jennifer Byrne-Vogel. And it's a video called A Holiday Called Home. It's a project of the Urban Voices Project, whose mission is to shift the narrative and perception of homelessness towards one of agency and community. So A Holiday Called Home is built on lyrics from songwriting workshops in Skid Row and music developed in collaboration with the Los Angeles klezmer rock band Mostly Kosher. I think some of you may have heard Mostly Kosher when we had our Jewish cultural fair a number of years ago, and Mostly Kosher came and played some music for us. So let's take a look at this video.
Picture on December night, but oh, one if you can.
A menorah and a Christmas tree to light up Fifth and Grand.
You watch every moment from a joyful Persian square.
You're sitting on the cold pavement while carols fill the air.
Imagine this love for the rest of the year.
When our hopeful voices cry, we shall not fear.
Let's think about a holiday we all call home.
Picture a mistletoe, eight candles in the window.
While songs sing, it's cold outside on a jingling radio.
You spent months imagining the Christmas tree to take home. The gifts you give your children, the warm meals they would have known. Imagine this love for the rest of the year.
When our hopeful voices cry, we shall not fear.
Think about a holiday we call home. Think about a holiday we call home. Think about a holiday.
With
with our breath and our voice,
with our hearts and our souls.
joy of the season gives us a reason to not leave one person alone.
Let's think about a holiday, the days that we call home. A holiday for all the year, no neighbor left to roam.
Let's think about a holiday, a place that we call home.
A holiday for all the years, no neighbor left to roam. A holiday for all the years, no neighbors left to roam. A holiday for all the years, a holiday for all the years.
Oh,
Imagine this love for the rest of the year. When our hopeful voices cry, we shall not fear.
let's think about a holiday we'll call. 'Tis the season to be jolly. Here's to you, kids. Merry Christmas. Much love.
Holiday we call home.
Where no one is ever left alone. Out of the hopelessness, there's a holiday that people can remember when they consider their neighbor as being themselves. Not a single person, millions of people in the city of Los Angeles, but not a single person.
What hope means, the similarity in the words between the words home and hope. Home isn't always about the place that we go back to, it's about the community that we're a part of and the hope that we find with them.
That we can think about a holiday called home.
So I put some lyrics in the chat. I hope it's the right song. Quickly look for it. Unfortunately, the way things work with Zoom and Microsoft is that if you do a better job sending out the video, you end up getting these big rectangular gray boxes across the screen. So what happens is it ends up being kind of out of sync, but I think you get the general message. I'm going to go to gallery view because I think that this piece, which is trying to change the narrative about homelessness, and not only the narrative, but the agency of the people who are homeless, is parallel in some ways to what our story is about this week in the Torah portion, which is about transformation. So we have a guy, Judah, and again, of course, this is written, the Bible's written by the people who won, which is basically the tribe of Judah. And there's a historical reason for why, they come out the best. They are the tribe from which the Messiah is going to come. But there's also this story about the transformation of this character who starts off, his father has a favorite son and seems to have absolutely no regard for the rest of the kids that he has, all these other sons that he has. And he pampers and spoils Joseph. And then without realizing or thinking about what the consequences are going to be, he sends Joseph out to go find his brothers somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And of course, then the brothers toss him into this pit. And they go back and they say to Jacob, he's dead. And they show him this bloody tunic. So obviously in this case, Judah is not at all concerned about his father's feelings, which is understandable. But then many, many years later, when the brothers are faced with the same situation where they could leave Benjamin behind and go back and tell the father, hey, guess what? Benjamin's not around us anymore either. He now has a different sense of consciousness. He now cares about what his father is going to be feeling. And he cares about what his brother's going to go through. And he's willing to sacrifice himself. So how do we get from one kind of being to somebody very, very different? What's that journey that we have to take? And I was going to break this up into smaller groups, but since a lot of people don't have their pictures on and may not join us, I thought, well, we're small enough that we can have a discussion together. What does it take to get to the place? And I'm sure many of us have issues with our parents, for example, where there was a favorite kid or where you weren't treated the way you should have been or whatever. How do you get to the place where you're able to basically forgive that person? It could be your spouse, it could be your own kid. You forgive them for something that was very painful and worry more about how they feel at this point than the way you feel. How do we get to that place? It's what we think about at the high holidays. So we can start preparing right now. Got almost a whole year ahead of us to prepare for it. What do we have to do to get to the place where we no longer are operating from the hurt and the anger to operating from a place of compassion and love, even for someone who's possibly hurt us?
I think we have to look back at what made them the way they were. That, what kind of childhood did they have, or how were they treated as children, that they turn around and don't treat their family the way they want to be treated.
Very good. So I think one of the ways is to operate from a place of understanding of where the other person's, where they're standing, right? Put yourself in their shoes and realize, well, maybe the reason this person is behaving this way it's not meant against me. It's about their own issues, right? Their own issues. But it doesn't mean that forgiving doesn't mean that you forget what's happened and you don't hold them accountable on some level. But there's some way in which you can kind of get beyond, as I said, operating from the anger and the hurt, operating from a different place. We all have to contend with people like this in our lives, whether it's our families, our friends, our bosses, our employees, somebody, in the shopping line ahead of you who, cuts in line and brings 35 items when you have one, whatever it is, right? Listen, I told you last, yeah.
I'll say, for me, Rabbi, and we've talked about this, it was my father. And, without diving too much into it, the relationship, but when I realized that it was coming to the point where he wasn't going to be around forever, and it not unlike, Judah, but when I realized he wasn't going to be around forever, you kind of reach that point where you find the forgiveness, and it might even be a place of selfishness, because if you don't forgive now, if you don't mend now, if you don't make an attempt now, when it's too late, you're going to look back and say, what could I have done in his living years, and why didn't I do it sooner? So my last 3 years with my father was me traveling back and forth to the East Coast, trying to put together some lasting relationship that I would have after he was gone.
Very nice. Very nice. As I mentioned in the story, and then Rick, I'll call on you because I see you unmuted yourself. Judah went through something, an experience that I think was partially responsible for his development, right? So he didn't want to lose another son. And so he withheld his third son from Tamar. And when she pointed out to him that he was the one who was responsible for getting her pregnant, right? But she did it in a very delicate way. She did not shame him. She let him come to his own conclusion. He could have ignored it. And it suddenly made him realize, I want to preserve my son for myself, but at the same time, this woman was not going to be able to have a child or have anybody take care of her. And by the way, of course, who descended from this Judah and Tamar being coupled? Who descended from that? A very important person. Well, he hasn't come around yet.
David?
David, yes, King David. Okay, so out of this strange coupling, and then later on between Boaz and Ruth, another odd coupling, because she's a Moabite who's forbidden, we get the Messiah. So sometimes things don't happen the way that we think they should happen, or the way we think that's the way things are. No, they happen in a completely different way, and new hope arises. Okay, Rick, go ahead.
For me, it was an intersection of two different events that happened at different times. One of them is when I became what my father's age was when I was 6 years old. At which point it was the first time I could see him as a person, not as a job description. This has to do with how brain function is at that point, okay? But it allowed me to see it. And the second interaction was I had kids and noticed that they saw me as a job description rather than as a person. At which point I had compassion for my father.
Very nice, very nice. And at 6 years old, that's a very early time. Okay, Jordan Lund raised his hand. Jordan.
Using the technology. Just kind of a general observation, something that I can relate to, though, is part of it, I think, is giving up your ego, one's ego, and the need to be right, the need to defend oneself. It's probably not a good idea to dwell on making sure that you prove you're right. And so it's going to be easier to forgive other people if you see them as someone who is struggling just in the world, just like you might be.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Letting go of your ego is part of the deal here, right? You don't have to be right. I mean, you can be wounded and you might have to deal with that woundedness, but you can be kind. I mean, I think the idea, Jacob was a terrible father. Let's be blunt about it, right? He's responsible for Joseph getting tossed into the pit or possibly murdered. And then when the brothers come back and say, he's dead, he's very upset, of course, but never in a million years does he even notice his other sons. And then when there's a possibility of Benjamin being detained, because they have to take Benjamin back to Egypt with them when they go visit Jacob, all he can think about is losing Benjamin. He never acknowledges these other sons. And next week, we'll hear his wonderful blessings of his sons. They're not so terrific. And Judah is able to get beyond that, which is pretty amazing, I think. And to me, that would be well deserving of having the Messiah come from his tribe. Bill, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I agree with everybody is saying, but sometimes when you have disagreements, you've got to get things in perspective. And you got to look at, by not forgiving, who does it hurt more? The person you want to forgive or yourself?
True. As they say, do you want to let that person take up all that room in your brain, rent free for as long as possible, right? All it can do is hurt you in the end. Very true. Any other comments before we just move on to the next?
If your question is, how to improve relationships? Is that the essence of your question?
How do you get to a point of being able to forgive? somebody that has done something very hurtful to you and to care more about how they feel than about how you feel at a particular instant? It's a way of improving relationships, yes. So did you have something you want to say about it? You're muted, Felice. Can you unmute? There you go.
Okay. Using another party to defer whom you might have a conflict with.
Okay,
Does
another
that
party
apply
could be
here?
helpful. Mhm. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
Rabbi,
Yes, Ezra. Ezra?
I was trying to think of the characters in the Torah who go through a crisis of conscience. You don't really
Not
see that much.
unmute.
But obviously, if you do the right thing, it's a lot easier on your conscience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, he could feel perfectly within his rights to say, okay, he wants to keep Benjamin. I guess that's the price we have to pay in order to get the food to survive. But that would just leave him where he was, basically somebody who isn't really conscious or caring of other people. And it's much harder to be conscious and caring of other people when the other person has really done you wrong, right? But it elevates him to another level. And the price you pay for not doing that is to just be a rotten person. And, I told you about last week, all the nasty comments that were on Congressman Mark Takano's Facebook page because of the fact that he had asked me to vote as an elector for whoever happened to win. Why do people have to be so nasty to each other? Really, does it cost anything to be a little more, delicate about how you speak to each other? And just elevates the temperature all the way around. And it's not the way our society is going to move forward. So yes, Marcia.
That's the problem, though, in general, at least on Mark's site and other politicians, is that people from the other viewpoint, if you will, they say whatever they feel like saying because they have no personal relationship with this person, so they can be as ugly as possible. And they think that the people that support what they think are going to think they're doing a great job, and that's all they care about. It's all about them.
Yeah, true. And when you don't know somebody directly, although I certainly have seen people put nasty comments to their friends also, and people have unfriended each other as a result of that. I think I think one of the things about this Torah portion is it's called Vayigash, right? So he came close to his brother. And I think it's in the coming close and being in the presence of this person on a very intimate level that changes the dynamic also, right? If he had just been emailing or Facebooking his brother, he might not have succeeded. But they connected on a very deep level. And that's at that point is when Joseph reveals himself finally. Okay, any last comments? So I do want to mention that January 15th, which is in just a few weeks, Congregation Emmanuel and us are going to do a joint service in honor of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. So we'll have a service together on that Friday night. And then on Saturday evening, there's a film called Shared Legacies that we're going to show. which is about the relationship between Blacks and Jews during the civil rights movement, when Blacks and Jews really worked together. And that relationship frayed for a long time. And there's a lot of effort now to repair that and to work together again. So I think, and we're going to have a discussion afterwards, after the film is shown. So we'll send out all the information about what the links are. One link for the service and one link for the film, and for the discussion. So we're looking forward to that. Aaron Weisben, who is the executive director of Hillel, is going to do a series on Israeli film, learning about Israel through films. And that's going to be in January as well. We have in Torah study finished the Torah. We have been reading the Torah for 9 years plus, verse by verse. And last Saturday, we completed it. So we are going to move on to start studying the book of Joshua. Thank you, Marcia, for clapping. We're going to move on to study the book of Joshua. And since we're beyond the Torah now, we're going to call it Tanakh study, which is the Hebrew Bible. And people are, of course, invited to join us. And in probably February, March, and April, we're going to do a series on aging, how to deal with aging, either our own aging or that of our families. So that should be interesting. And I'm doing that one in conjunction with our sister synagogue in Ventura. The rabbi there is Rabbi Lisa Hochberg Miller. So we will send out more information about that. And there's lots of other stuff coming. Purim in February, I have a class that I'm going to be given. So does anybody have any announcements other than ones I made? No? Okay. Oh, and of course, I'm teaching Introduction to Judaism starting in January. And the class is rather large at this point. It's about 30 people, so I'm closing it. But of course, if any of you want to attend a session, you are more than welcome to. So I want to thank Jason for doing a wonderful job behind the scenes as a techie with the various slides and the focusing on whoever's speaking and all that. You have to have like 8 arms like an octopus or something to do this job. So I really appreciate your help. And I want to thank Jordan for his beautiful music. Wherever he is, I can't see him on the screen. Oh, there he is down there. Yes, thank you. Okay, we will continue with the Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot velo samanu kamishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam helkenu kahem vegor aleinu kehol hamonam, va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim, Lifnei Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Shehu Notei Shamayim ve'yoser Aretz, Umoshav Yekaro b'Shamayim mima'al, Ushchinatu zo, Begavhei Meromim, Hu Eloheinu ein od. Emet Malkeinu Efesulato, Kakatu Vetorato, Viadata Hayam Vehashevot, Elevaveha, Ki Adonai Hu Elohim, Bashamayim Mima, Ve'al Haaretz, Mitachat. Ein od, kakatu v'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, v'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol ha'aretz, Bayom hahu, bayom hahu, Yeh Adonai echad, Ushamo, Ushamo, Ushamo echad. I'm sorry, my cat is trying to drink my water and okay, cat, you're gonna have to get out of the way. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Goodbye. Ah, yes. No, she is coming back. All right. I'm sorry. She's trying to drink from my glass, but there's so little water in there that she's pushing her head all the way in and can't reach it.
Forgive her.
Good. Bye, kitty. Okay. Let's get back to our service. At least she's not walking across the Torah, right?
No.
So during this holiday season, it is very difficult for people to have lost someone. And there are a few people in particular this season who are particularly vulnerable. Elise Martinez and her family lost Eliud Martinez in the last few days. And Randy Lester Wilson, Ryan Lester Wilson, and Sean Lester Wilson lost their mother-in-law and grandmother, Janine Lester. We're observing Shloshim for Robert Stewart, father of Teresa Seitz, and Jim Press, husband of Grace Press. And if you are in Shloshim or Shiva, and you would like to add a name, please do so. Henry Stern and Shloshim, Susan Jones, first year.
Werner Kopel.
Arnie Geller.
Gordon Bone, Valdine Petty, Carl Petty, Adele Lucas, Rabbi Bennett Herman.
Pat Costantini.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Gary Ferris. Anyone else? We're observing yard sites this Shabbat for Ben Samsky, John Portlock, Louis Triber, Jacob Enish, Kenneth T. Hayes, Fanny Rapport, Ruth Woodcock, May Maxman, Irene Winston, Erwin Fishman, Karen Youngerman, Stephen G. Lynch, Eunice Peck, Abraham Friedman, Ernie Lau Staunow, June Miron, Dora Rogalski, Claire Cannell, Louis Geller, Julie Cannell, S. Louis Friedman, Maxine Lerner, Abraham Schwartz, Barbara Sultan. Is anyone else observing a yard site? Marlise Marcus, Brenda Perry Oppenheim, first year. And if you'd like to unmute for the Mourner's Cottage, please feel free to do so. And please join me in the Mourner's Cottage. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah v'alma divrach echutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayachon u'v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael v'agala u'v'zman kariv imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shemei Kudusha, Barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav,
Shalom bimromav.
hu
Yaseh
ya'aseh
shalom.
shalom
Aleinu
aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, as together we say.
Amen.
And our closing song is Hard Times Come Again No More.
This is a song from Stephen Foster that was published in 1854. And we just finished watching a series from Australia called Stateless about immigrants in refugees in Australia and how they kind of got lost in these detention centers and made us both think that we should never complain about our lives again. But Stephen Foster wrote this song wanting people to consider the plight of those that are less fortunate, who have harder times. And hopefully that as we move forward, the hard times won't come again. Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all sup sorrow with the poor. And there's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music light and gay, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a sigh that is wafted across the troubled wave. 'Tis a wail that is heard upon the shore. 'Tis a dirge that is murmured around the lowly grave. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more.
And we do a motzi before people go off for their Chinese dinners or dessert.
Motzi lechem min haaretz, we give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Shabbat Shalom. If you'd like to stick around for a little chat, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, have a great weekend. See you in the new year.
Shabbat shalom.